Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Joining us once again is our professional of the year, Diana Bejasa, our speaker, author, life coach, and so much more. It's all about savoring life with Diana. Yeah, that's the name of her company, Savor Life with Diana. She's here today to talk more about the work she does, how she's helping us, and I'm excited to dive in today's topic, which I'm going to save that for a little tease. So first and foremost, tell us a little about who you are, what you do, and we'll go to episode 32. Go for it,
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah. So I'm all about helping high performers who want it all. They want the success, they want the thriving family life, they want the thriving health, they want the sanity. And maybe they've been letting that success cost them in some way that they're no longer willing to do anymore. I believe that we can have it all, and that what we need to do is just be really strategic and intentional about it. I also think that a lot of existing personal development I've found can set up a myth for what's possible. And I think that, like, why don't we break that? Why don't we really figure out what we can do, what we need to do in order to have what we truly desire?
Beautiful. And you're always here to help and so gracious, so kind, so genuine. Last time we talked about a lot of her retreats that she offers. There's still so much more to talk about. And we'll talk more about that in just a sec. We're going to start with today's conversation about your new title won't change your life, but this will. All right. What are we talking about here?
Okay. So, you know that feeling when you finally get the thing that you've been wanting for so long? Maybe it's the title, maybe it's the job, maybe it's the ring, maybe it's the degree, the client. And you feel this like spike of relief, this peace, this like excitement, like you finally made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here's the problem. That moment fades,
It's
right?
like, what?
And then
I
what?
want more. I want something else. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but also like, it's like you have it and then you're like, okay, well, what's next, right? And a lot of times for many people, it ends up being more of the same. And that's why I really want to talk today about the difference between just chasing mile markers and choosing your actual direction. Because I find that your new title, it's not really going to change your life. But when you make a decision to shift your path, or when you make a decision to affirm your path, that really can change your life.
All right. Guide us through milestones. Where are we starting?
Okay, so a lot of times we look at things as if they're milestones, but they're really mile markers, right? Like your 40th birthday, graduating, a new job title, a relationship status change. We cheer about it, right? We celebrate it as if something has really changed. We call it a turning point, but a lot of times it's not. In reality, a lot of those points are more like a checkpoint or like a mile marker, right? Something that confirms that we're on the path. It tells us how far we've gone, but it doesn't tell us where we're going, right? Because what we're doing is we're still operating from those same patterns. We're still proving ourselves in the same old ways. And in my opinion, what distinguishes a milestone from a mile marker is that a milestone marks our transformation, right? A mile marker is just there to track distance. And there's nothing wrong with mile markers, right? Like it's good to know, like, okay, I've hit 20, I've hit 30, I've hit 40, I've hit 50, whatever in terms of our age that looks like right now. But that's not the same as like actually making a change. Does that make sense? So like just because you turn
Hmm.
40 doesn't mean that anything's different, right? Or just like I remember when I was little thinking when I turned 10, I was like, wow, I'm now like a two-digit age. Like
Yeah, that was the
everything is
coolest
different. Like
thing.
nothing's actually different.
It's not.
Yeah, or even like
It's
when I
so
finally got my
not.
divorce decree, right? Like I remember feeling or thinking like, okay, I'm gonna finally feel like free or peace. Like nothing really changed. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that it's not the marker for something beginning to
Mm-mm.
potentially change.
Nope.
What it is like that alone doesn't make the change. So when we're focused on like that external change or that external title or whatever that looks like, that's going to be really unfulfilling. And it's false change, right? It's like it's changing the window dressing. It's not actually changing where you live or revamping the home or any of that stuff, right? So um, when we look at that, right, like the version of you who gets a diploma, the job, the ring, whatever, I think it's worth us asking, like, did we just check a box?
Mm-hmm.
Are we actually changing the way that we think, that we choose, the way that we lead? And when I host retreats or whenever I work with my coaching clients, that's the first interruption we make, right? We stop. We pause the hustle, right? Because it's very easy to keep just spinning our wheels and going in the same direction we've been going. It's very um, it's very transformational, though, instead for us to ask, like, is this a life that we want to keep speeding through? Or is it time to take a true turn and take this mile marker and turn it into a milestone, right? So I remember when I was working in banking and I had shifted to I decided, like, I was leaving the banking industry to work as a chef. I moved cross country to California and worked as a chef, did all these different things. Eventually, like, moved back to New York, got really sick, burned out, and I was planning to make this change again, where I was gonna, like, I had developed chronic illness, I developed autoimmune disease, I was losing my hair, I was just like really frustrated and I wanted to change. I was like, I was like, like I can't do this again. Like um I don't want to keep feeling this way. So I designed in my mind first this life that I wanted. I was like, okay, I'm going to be free of these health issues. I want to, everything that has been holding me back in the past, like, I want to be free of that. I want to finally start my own business. I want to do all these things that I've been wanting to do that I haven't done. And I want to move to Hawaii on top of it because that was like a dream for me. And
Yeah.
I was sharing my dream, this plan that I had for the future with my then husband. And well, he asked me a really life-changing question, and that was like, so what's different? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, we're gonna live in Hawaii. I'm gonna have a new
Mm-hmm.
job. I'm gonna start my own business. Like, I'm gonna
Wow.
change my health. Like, everything's gonna be different. And he was like, you've done all that before. And he was right. And I share with this story with you because I want you to check in and look at that time that you changed your life and really think about, like, this change that you want to make next. Like, is it actually a change? Or have you done this before? Have you moved? Have you changed jobs? Have you started a new relationship? Um, have you gotten a degree before, right? Like, did any of that stuff actually change? Because the truth is, if we don't change direction, then we're still going the same way, right? And, like, I don't just mean like physical direction, I mean like internal direction. Like, we got to look at our GPS and say, like, am I headed in the way that I really want to be, right? And what I realized was, yeah, like, I have moved across the country before. I have changed jobs before. So what is going to be different? And I realized that as much as I changed the external in the past, where I never really had made significant change was on the internal. And so that's, I think, where the real transformation begins, because it's easy to change a window dressing, like I was saying. It's much more profound to, to revamp the whole home, right? Or to move into a different home. Like, that's what actually creates a real internal change.
Wow. Well, a lot of us would like change, would need change, would like, not need change, but we yearn for the thing we call change. And it would so benefit us, right? Sometimes, but it's also very scary to walk in different shoes, walk a different path, and to change certain patterns. But it's good to also reestablish yourself. And, yeah, it's still kind of the same you, but a little different. How do we rephrase that?
Yeah. So when we notice, right, like, we have this new label, but it's the same old us, that's our point of realizing, just like I had in that story that I shared about myself, like, that's when I realized, like, okay, wow, nothing has actually changed, right? Like, I think about this too when like I went to high school, right? So I went to high school right by the World Trade Center. I was there for 9/11. And I remember what I thought was the most important stuff that day. Before whatever that time was, like early that morning, right? Like, it was the beginning of September, school had just started. I was in my senior year. So I was thinking about all the things that a senior girl in the beginning of the year would be thinking about, right? Like I'm thinking about boys, I'm making sure that my outfits for them, are like all fresh and new. I'm thinking a little bit about college and graduation, but like not really. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But then planes struck the World Trade Center, and
Ugh,
in an instant, my focus changed, right? Like all the things that I thought were important came into question. And one of those things was the path that had been laid out for me, right? With the graduations. And I wanted to talk about this because of all the graduations that are coming up right now, because of some of the patterns or the cycles that are ending and new cycles that are beginning. And what I noticed was like there were many ways where I was following a path that other people had set out for me as opposed to the path that I really wanted. So you walk away with a graduation, right? You walk away with a degree or whatever that looks like. Um you walk away with a ring, right? But like nothing's actually changed,
yeah.
right? You're still following a path that somebody else laid out for you without really asking, is this the path that you want to be on?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So sometimes when we have that like deflation that we feel after achieving something big, like why did I got this job, so why am I still unfulfilled? Or why do I still not feel like enough? Or I launched the business, so why do I still feel like I'm an imposter? Or I hit the goal, so why don't I feel proud of myself? Or why don't I feel freer? And the reason is because that the label doesn't change the pattern. Right. So when
Yeah.
we're following, especially somebody else's path for us forward, we're not really getting clear on who we are, right? So the degree is not going to teach us our worth. The wedding band doesn't fix emotional avoidance or our own like secure attachment issues or insecure attachment issues, I should say. Even the promotion, right? It's not going to silence your inner critic. So what I think we need to do instead, right, is it like instead of just thinking about what the goal is, right? Like when I shared wanting to move to Hawaii, wanting to start my own business, all those different things. What we want to do instead of just chasing the external, like we were talking about, is really figure out how do we want to feel? What do we equate this promotion
Mm-hmm.
or this ring or this job title with like what are we really looking for? Or
Yeah.
like in there, that's where we might see like I'm really looking to feel fulfilled, or I'm really looking for peace, I'm really looking for confidence, I'm really, I feel like if I had this then I would finally feel this way. And what we're really chasing, and it's the same thing as like with an addict, right? They're not really chasing the substance as much as they're chasing the feeling that it gives them.
Totally.
They're chasing the satisfaction, the peace, the comfort that it brings. So that's why I'm saying here, like to really interrupt the pattern, right? That's where we stop and ask those questions of like, how do I actually want to feel?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like not only are the like am I heading in the direction I want, but what is this feeling direction that I want to head in? Like this internal GPS, like I was sharing earlier, right? And that's how we begin to create a life that actually feels different. And it doesn't just look different. And that's how we look into the actual becoming different. Is like we got to look at like how do we actually want to feel, right? Do we want that more peace? Do we want more security? Do we want more confidence? Like what is it that we really want to feel like? Um, like I remember I was working with a client one time and we were talking about like, her dream and like the tension she was feeling because it wasn't there. And I was like, what does this signify to you?
Yeah.
What do you really want to feel by this? Like, how do you think you would feel when you had this? Right. And so often that how we think we're going to feel when we have it doesn't match up to how we actually feel, even if we get it. And
Yeah.
that's where we lead, that's what leads to us feeling that lack of fulfillment. And so for me, it's like, how do we actually make sure that if we're going to achieve this thing that we believe is going to make us feel this way, how do we also make sure that we actually feel that way and create like a permanent shift instead of just something that like feels good in the moment when we check the box.
Mm, gosh. True. Thank you so much. All right. So your new title won't change your life. But what we're talking about today with our Burn Through Catalyst and speaker, Diana Bejasa, joining us here live from Hawaii. Of course, right? She did change her life. She uprooted to Hawaii, made it happen with a little baby. And yeah, with this amazing New York City career on Wall Street as a chef and just totally changed. And her life is, I'm sure it wasn't easy, but it's wonderful now, right? And there's still ups and downs, but you did it. And, you guys can change your own life. And she's an expert in helping people. And I just want to remind you of who she is and what she's doing because we're at that point. So, Diana, what did
Yeah.
you learn from this change?
Yeah. So many people, it could be easy to think like, oh, my life changed because I moved to Hawaii. I'll tell you that my life is not going to be net like less stressful just because I live here. There is plenty of stress. There's plenty of struggle here as well. What changed was me, my mindset, like my pattern. So this is where like we actually make real, not just momentum, but movement. And like there's a difference there, right? Like so like a lot of times you'll see people like I said, like I had moved, I'd changed jobs, I had shifted careers, from banking to working as a chef, and here I was planning to do it again. Like I realized that I needed to dive deeper. And not just change the window dressing, like I've been saying, but really change what was going on the inside. Because when you shift stuff on the inside, all of the outside stuff changes by necessity, just by you being a different person. Um, and so rather than just focus on movement, right, like making a move or making a change, I think there's a space for us to really think about like, are we going in the right direction? And like, is it like a full body change or is it just like we're trying to like force ourselves to make a hard left? Um, so I think that a lot of times momentum, right? Because there's a big difference between movement and momentum.
Yeah,
Momentum is success. Sorry,
success. I
momentum
know.
is seductive,
Oh,
right? Like,
gotcha. 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 Yep. Okay.
yeah. So it's really seductive to us because we can see it, right? We can see this movement forward. We're doing all the things, we're checking the boxes, we're moving fast, but a lot of times we're not really moving forward. We're just spinning our
Mm-mm.
wheels.
Spinning the
So,
wheels and continuing
yeah,
to go and go
right.
and
And like
go
we've talked
and go.
about the about race cars and their pit stops, right? Because
You need
the
to
power
fuel
that
up.
we
You need to
have,
change, even though if it's a few
yeah,
seconds. Yes.
yeah. The power that we have, the movement that we make means nothing if we're not aligned, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
being out of alignment leads to um, potentially like our wheels falling off. So we gotta check, right? And not just take a vacation, but really take a break that's intentional, giving ourselves like this opportunity to rest and look for like, am I at another mile marker? Do I want to use this as a moment to realign or to get more intentional about my direction versus just continuing to follow the path that somebody else laid out for you?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's not your path. Like when I looked at when I was in high school, right? And I was a high achiever back then too, and I was always about the path that other people set out for me. So I was like, okay, like this is the path that everybody tells me. Okay, you graduate high school, you study, you do all the things, then you go to college, and then you graduate, and then you get this job and all these different things. And I realized at a certain point, I was like, this is a path, but it's a generic path. Is it my path? Is this really who I want to be? Is this really what I
Mm-hmm.
want to do? Right. And like, I mean, I think that path is really seductive because a lot of times, like, I'll even see younger kids who struggle with or who really think about, like, is this a path that I want to go on? They notice some of their colleagues who seem really clear on like, oh, I'm just going to take this path to medical school, right? So it's like they're jealous because other people have the path laid out in front of them, but there's really nothing more exciting and fulfilling than forging your own, finding your way, right? Like finding what it is that you truly are supposed to do. And maybe medical school is a pit stop along the path. Maybe it's a part of the direction you head, but it doesn't have to be the final direction, right? And I think that's really what's important for us is to think about like, where do I ultimately want to go? What do I really want to create? Is this in alignment with who I really want to be? I don't think we ask those questions enough about who we want to be, what we want to do. Because again, if we just keep going down the path that other people have set for us, or going down the path because it's the one that we've set in the past for ourselves, that is just focused on momentum. And
Got
momentum
it.
is important, but momentum is most important for us heading in the direction we want to go. So it's
Yeah.
worth us taking that stop every now and then, even if it interrupts our momentum, so we can really look and say, okay, is the steering wheel still headed where I want it to go? Or am I facing it somewhere that somebody else told me is where I'm supposed to want to go and not really where I want to go? So that's part of why I created my retreats, right? It's for
Yeah.
it's for high performers, for leaders who don't want to who don't just want to escape their lives temporarily,
Mm-hmm.
but actually want to be brave enough and reinvent their lives, right? So actually not just slow down for the sake of slowing down, but to realign, to shift gears. And so instead of just walking in and moving forward with momentum, we walk out with actual movement that serves us, right? Because again, like we said, the title's not going to change anything. But deciding who you're becoming, deciding your path, using that mile marker as a true milestone,
Mm-hmm.
deciding which direction you're going to go, and if it's still in the same direction, affirming it and knowing and feeling confident knowing that you're going in the right direction is also very important. So taking that moment to decide before we just keep going is incredibly important,
Ah,
because
beautifully
that's where
said.
we realize, right? Like it's, when we take that time to pause, not to quit, not but to actually realign, that's what matters. So if you're realizing that it's your time to pause, to really think about, like, are you happy in the direction you're going? Are you pleased with the momentum where it's going to take you? If you're not, if you want to talk a little bit about that, like, let's do it. Like, you can find my contact information on my website, savorlifewithdiana.com. You can also reach out to me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. It's all at Savor Life with Diana. No, it's all at Diana Bejasa Speaks. Uh, and yeah, there can just be this opportunity for us to question and to really not just build a life by default, but to build a life by design.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Save Our Life with Diana, and we will do so. Thanks again. Podcast number 33 coming next week. Holy cow. Thank you again for being here, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.